Good Sunday afternoon to everyone. So people call it Black Sunday. Some people call it Bloody Sunday. That's what I call it. When coaches in college football that have not done well dread getting up in the morning because they could be fired, or they debate and think about their future and decide to resign. We've done had a little bit of everything this year, a little bit early than a Sunday, Bloody Sunday. We have David Shaw at Stanford resigned today. We have a coaching hire coming out of Wisconsin and Luke Fickle. So we're going to have changes all throughout this week. Get ready, man. Hold on to your seats. But I've got some great guests lined out for us, and I'm going to bring them all in here at one time and introduce them to you. So we've got Tide Guy, Mr. Jeff Grimm. Thanks for coming in, buddy. We also
Hey, Joey,
have
thanks.
OneScoop John. We have
Go
OneScoop
Blue.
John. We have WillND. We also have Tony Altimore. And then to start the show off with, I've got a guest in the back room. He's now works for KYW News Radio in Philadelphia, and he's a former Wisconsin Badgers radio show host. And he's going to talk to us about the hiring of Luke Fickle for the Wisconsin Badgers. And that's Jay Sorgi from Sorgi Stories. What's going on, Jay?
It is a blast to be with all you guys, especially with you, Joey. Thank you so much.
Hey, congrats on a great big hire.
Huge.
Yeah.
Outstanding hire, and one that I think in retrospect, you could expect Wisconsin to go after, but I don't think people were thinking they're going to get a guy like a Luke Fickle initially. But I think they had to strike immediately once they saw that there was this opportunity, and they've apparently got him.
Well, and it's a great role for him too.
Yeah,
it's a perfect setting. It's in a conference that he knows. And I think for the Badgers, it is a needed departure from what I'm going to use the phrase Berry ball. Because outside of Gary Anderson for a few years with the Badgers after the departure of Brett Bielema to go to Arkansas, every coach from 1989 on has either been Barry Alvarez or a protege of Barry Alvarez through the Alvarez tree. And Wisconsin in that whole period of time has been either a very, very good team down to an average team. But when they've been very, very good, they've been outstanding, but not yet at that level where they can compete for national championships. And it's because of the style of football that Barry Alvarez has pretty much demanded to be the Wisconsin culture, ground and pound. You don't win national titles with an offense that does ground and pound. And the hope is hiring outside the Barry Alvarez tree, Luke Fickle is going to get the kind of recruits that you need to build a more expansive offense and give Wisconsin that shot of getting to that Ohio State level and competing for spots at the college football playoff.
It's hard for teams who have like such a rich tradition to make that departure and that understanding that we have to move on from our people that are tied to our rich history. I mean, if you look at Alabama, you look at USC, you look at Notre Dame, you look at Ohio State, you look at, all the Florida State, all those programs, you had like some struggles as you held on to folks. Michigan's a bad example because Harbaugh is literally the prodigal son. But you have to make departures sometimes, and it's hard, but what a home run. I think it's awesome for them.
Outstanding hiring. And the crazy part is,
away from that Berry ball.
Yeah,
I want to ask you a question about this, Jay.
Sure.
So you're getting away from that Berry ball, so to speak, and we kind of did that at West Virginia a long time ago. So we got, when Don Nehlen sat down as our head coach, we brought in Rich Rodriguez. All of a sudden, we were spread offense, running gun, where we used to be, pounded on the ground, just run it down their throats. That's all we did under Don Nehlen. So it was a big change for us. Then we went back after Rich Rodriguez and got Bill Stewart, kind of went back to a ground and pound football game. The fans weren't happy. And, even though we were winning games, we were winning 8, 9, 10 games every year. They weren't happy with the offense production. So they had to go to Dana Holgorsen, which gave us a wide open spread offense again. And it's like once you make that step to the wide open spread offense, it's hard to step back down because the fans are expecting this wide open running gun. Hey, shoot from the hip, go down the field offense. You can't step back into a ground that on the ground, pounded on the ground offense. Does that make sense? Once you can, I think it's an easier step to go to the pass happy offense than it is to step down from that. Do you think that can eventually affect Wisconsin? Let's say Luke Fickell leaves after a couple of years, and you're used to watching that offense. All of a sudden, you go back to ground and pound. How would your fans feel then? Because
I don't think necessarily the fan base is going to be so particularly attached to a certain type of offense. I would imagine if I'm Luke Fickell, I'm seeing this as I don't want to completely destroy Berry Bowl. I don't want to destroy ground and pound. But we need to build upon that and build more beyond that if we want to compete for championships. Wisconsin is always going to have great recruiting capability when it comes to offensive linemen because in-state in Wisconsin, that's what they can recruit. They have such great relationships with high schools such as Heartland Arrowhead High School outside of Milwaukee. They have gotten numbers of NFL caliber players from Heartland Arrowhead. Perfect example, Kevin Zeitler of the Cincinnati Bengals. And they find those kind of players all over the state. They know they can recruit running backs from all over the country.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor all the way down to the late Brent Moss, who recently passed away, who was their star in the 93 Rose Bowl season. But they know they have to be able to do more. And if you look at the one position where Wisconsin has lacked in their entire history, only twice, only in 2 years, have they had All-American caliber quarterbacks. Russell Wilson in 2011, which was a one-year rental. And you got to go back. Maybe, Joey, you might know this name. I don't know if the rest of you guys would. A guy named Ron Vanderkellen, 1962. He played with Pat Richter, if you know that name, played in Washington for a bunch of years in the NFL. That year, he was a Heisman caliber quarterback, and Wisconsin came within seconds of winning a national championship by coming back from 28 points down against number 1 USC in the Rose Bowl. Coming back from 28 down in the fourth quarter in a New England Atlanta Super Bowl like type of comeback.
Let's not forget the great Graham Mertz, who had one legendary game against Illinois, and then
Lovie Smith.
He beat up on you guys too, John.
That is a good point.
Yeah, but it's the one position they have not been able to recruit. If Luke Fickell can unlock that door and get 4-star, 5-star level recruits to Madison at that position, Wisconsin is an instant title contender. I'm not saying he's going to be able to do that. If he can, you've got it.
Yep. And now you have also in the Big Ten West. Also in the Big Ten West, you have Matt Rule coming in at Nebraska. So now you've got two guys. You've got Matt Rule and Luke Fickell in the West that can recruit very good talent. Both of them great recruiters that are going to change the look of the Big Ten West. If you ask me, it's going to completely reform the Big Ten West. So do you see Matt Rule having great success at Nebraska in that recruiting field and turning things around there? And then will the West be back now? Will the Big Ten West, they've been down for quite a while. Will they be back now with Nebraska and Wisconsin hiring these new coaches?
Matt Rule, we know can recruit. We know we can recruit by far. He's going to do at Nebraska potentially what Luke Fickell could do at Wisconsin in terms of making them an instant level contender in that division. Ohio State's not going anywhere. With Jim Harbaugh in Ann Arbor, Michigan's not going anywhere. It's going to turn from a 2-team race to occasionally a 3-team race, occasionally a 4-team race in the Big Ten in certain years. I'm not saying Wisconsin and Nebraska are going to be Ohio State and now Michigan every single year, but I think both those programs, in terms of overall long-term concept, see themselves in that class, at least of Michigan and just below Ohio State. And these two guys, Fickell and Rule, can recruit Wisconsin and Nebraska, respectively, to get to that level in certain years. It's not going to be every year, but it's going to be certain years where they can compete with an Ohio State.
Jay, I've got a question for you
Sure.
related to Luke Fickell's interest in this job versus, he's been rumored and attached to almost every single job opening in the last couple of years as Cincinnati's improved, right? What in particular interested him about this job, or at least what are you hearing that might have been a factor versus others that he had been tagged to the last year and change?
Wisconsin is a top 15 revenue program when it comes to college football. And I can tell you from having gotten to meet some of the donors of the program in my years in Madison, if you tell them we can bring in a coach that can give us instant capability of competing for the college football playoff, the dollar signs go up. They would rise, I would easily see, to a top 10 program. I could see Luke Fickell making top 10 coaching money at Wisconsin, number one. Number two, with these other programs, and this is just my speculation, I don't know him well personally to be able to say this, but you go to those other programs that you mentioned, some of the great other programs in college football that have histories of national championships. You're adding to your legacy or to the legacy of the program. If, say, for example, Saban retired tomorrow at Alabama and Luke Fickell goes to Alabama, he has to compete with the legacies of Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. He, yes, has the legacy of Barry Alvarez, who made that program. Mm-hmm. But if he wins a national title, they might name the field after him. He becomes the legacy. He won't have to buy a drink or steak in the state of Wisconsin for the rest of his life.
No,
they will knight the guy. And in Wisconsin, because they don't have that history, he can create that legacy himself, built upon what Barry Alvarez did with the foundations in the last 30 years, but he can build a skyscraper in Madison.
Tiger, I believe you had a question a while ago, and I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Well, my thing is, you're going to get a better quarterback now at Wisconsin. Quarterbacks aren't going to go – a great quarterback is not going to go to a team that runs the ball. I mean, he's just not – because you're not going to show off your talent. So, I mean, that's what really limited Wisconsin all those years. And the thing with Russell Wilson was – he could run the ball. So, I mean, he was a dual threat. So, I mean, going to Wisconsin made sense for him. But Wisconsin was never going to get a pro-style quarterback because they wasn't going to throw four receivers, and just throw the ball. And I think that was one of the problems, like you had mentioned. Alabama made the same mistake. Alabama was so struck on Bear Bryant that anybody after Bear Bryant had to either play for Bear Bryant and coach with Bear Bryant, or he had to have a tie with Bear Bryant. And then finally we realized it really wasn't working. We had to go a different direction. And I wonder how hard it is for some people in Wisconsin to kind of give up what Barry Alvarez has built and go a different direction.
There'll be individuals who perhaps will have that. But there's a very interesting article that came out immediately today after the news broke of the hire of Luke Fickell. Jim Polzin from the Wisconsin State Journal talked to the one guy who you might think have the biggest issue with it, and he said that he didn't. He called this a home run. That's Barry Alvarez. If Barry Alvarez puts his blessing on this hire, especially if Luke Fickell says, you know what, we're making this a pro-style passing game. We're not going to let go of the run, but we're going to open things up and make it an NFL style of offense. Not necessarily full spread like you see, obviously, so many college programs do, but an NFL kind of game, and they win. Oh my gosh. It's a no-brainer. And very frankly, I see the NFL game moving more towards the running game. You've seen that be much more accentuated in the pro game this year, but where you don't lose the importance of the pass at all. The great quarterbacks are still critical to that kind of a game. I see Wisconsin running that kind of an offense, where if you bring in a top flight quarterback, they throw the football 35 times a game, run it 35 times, run it 30, that kind of a balance of offense where you don't lose the importance of who they know they can recruit, but where it's expanded enough where you can finally keep defenses honest and you can make the big pass play a weapon.
Right. And in the Big Ten, you cannot be just pass.
Right.
Because there's weather days, you know.
Yep.
In the Big Ten, you got weather days, so you've got to be able to pound it. And if you can't, you know, so I mean, you can't, like you said, you can't completely go against the run because that's what you need in the bad weather games. You know, in late October, November in the Midwest, you need that running game.
Oh yeah,
10,000%. And the thing is, too, if you develop that great balance of an offense. The best teams, the teams that win national championships, and Ty Guy, you know this as well as anybody, the teams that win it all can beat you playing your game, can beat you playing their game. If your strength is stopping the run, they can throw for 300, 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. If they double up your receivers or run deep zones, you run for 150, 200 yards, and they find a way to beat you no matter what.
Yeah,
that's what Wisconsin has lacked for so long. The capability to win offensively multiple ways. This could change that.
Yeah. So we're speaking with Jay Sorgi. Jay's with KYW News Radio out of Philadelphia right now. He's a former Wisconsin Badgers radio host out of Wisconsin. And so he's gracious enough to give us some time here today. Hey, can you stick around a little bit? I want to go over some games from yesterday. You want to talk a little bit of football about games yesterday? Let's talk about some upsets. So we had all kinds of upsets yesterday, didn't we, guys? I had a great bet card.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I had a great bet card. I think I sent you a copy of my bet card. It was fantastic. I picked some of these upsets, and it really worked out for me to the better. So Clemson falling to South Carolina. We all told Clemson this could come, did we not? I think we all seen this coming. I did for sure. So, you know, Clemson falling to South Carolina, LSU falling to Texas A&M. Maybe not everybody seen it coming, but I kind of did. I picked
LSU.
it. Yeah, LSU. Yeah. And
LSU
falling to Michigan. I mean, we had some great upsets yesterday. Let's start with you, Ty Guy. What was your favorite game yesterday that ended in an upset? It's got to be the LSU game, but
you know, I had mixed emotions on the LSU game. I wanted Fisher to lose. I wanted him to only win 4 games this year, you know, and all that money you spent on recruiting and all those recruits went bye-bye. And, you know, you can buy the best class you want, but you only win 4 games, you know. I mean, I was actually more proud of South Carolina beating Clemson because if we could take the South Carolina team the last 3 weeks and they could have started that team to begin the year, they could have done some damage. I mean, they're playing really great football right now. They didn't in the beginning of the year. So, I mean, I'm really impressed with South Carolina being able to beat Clemson. I know Clemson, it's a down year, but to me, that was a really great win.
Yeah, it was. So the chat, notice what I did here. So I brought in an SEC guy and Ty Guy, Big Ten guy and John. We've got Sorgi Stories here with us, who's also a Big 12 guy too. He likes West Virginia. Tony, who's a Pac-12 guy. Will, who's a Notre Dame fan and independent. You got me, a Big 12. So all the conferences are represented here, in a sense, except for the ACC. And you know,
Notre Dame's technically, part ACC.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
count.
John, I'm not even going to ask you what your favorite game was.
Although just to be clear, USC is the ACC champions now. So
yeah, that's right.
Transitive property. Gotta love that transitive.
Yeah, but transitive property, USC, they're just going to ship us the trophy, I think.
Yeah. But, John, I'm not going to ask you what your favorite game yesterday was because I'm sure it was Rutgers and somebody or something like that.
Yeah, Rutgers.
I'm just kidding.
So, obviously, I'm making the rounds on this because Buckeyes have been talking trash for 365 days since the last time, even on chat rooms that have nothing to do with Ohio State or Michigan. Ohio State's going to cream Michigan at the shoe and all this other stuff. And what happens? Our best Heisman running back candidate is out for pretty much the whole game. He ran like 6 yards. Okay. It's 50 degrees. There's no snow. There's no flu. It's at Columbus. And Ohio State pays $2 million to get a defensive coordinator to stop us. And we somehow beat them worse than last year. This is the best day ever.
It was great. I have a friend who was upset. He has a vacation house, and the Wi-Fi password is derived from your win last year. And he's like, "How can I change it? I'm 2,000 miles away. It needs to be updated."
Now, John, I had a question for you, John. All year long, did Michigan purposely not throw the ball deep to surprise Ohio State? Because all year long, you wouldn't throw the ball. And then yesterday, you were just zinging it downfield.
Okay, so if you go back to, the games that nobody watched, Hawaii, Connecticut, and you actually look at the film, you'll notice that they were practicing the deep ball. And JJ was actually pretty good at doing it. And I know it was shaky after that, and they didn't really need to for a lot of these teams. Okay, Blake Corum is good enough that 90% of the time he's going to win you the football game, especially with Edwards backing him up. Okay, but in this game, the pass was really needed. Nothing was happening on the ground. I think for quite some time, Michigan had 1 rushing yard on the board during that game. So if JJ hadn't unleashed the deep ball and the medium ball, then we would have gotten destroyed. And it goes back to what Jay was saying earlier about, and what everybody was saying about having a balanced offense. If you look at the Stanford playbook from back when Harbaugh was running Stanford, it's very similar playbook here. Running the ball will get you there 90% of the time, or you have Andrew Luck sling the deep ball. If you're going to load 9 up in the box and disrespect the passing game like that, then you're leaving yourself open for the deep ball. So I think the answer is, they were saving some stuff, but they had been practicing stuff throughout the year. It's just it tended to be the games that nobody was watching.
So, Will, let me ask you a question. What happened to Notre Dame yesterday? And I know that wasn't your favorite game and ended in an upset, that's for sure. But you're still ACC champs. Is Will with us? Oh, Will must have stepped away. Well, Tony, you're USC.
We're the ACC champ.
Team. You're now the ACC champ. There's Will. Will, you're muted. Did you hear what I said?
Although I've been told we might have to share with Marshall, but that's okay.
Will, I was asking you. You're still ACC champs. We all know that. But how did you feel yesterday after losing to USC? Knowing you're still ACC champs anyway.
I mean, it's disappointing losing to your rival, but I don't think we're going to, maybe we could have came up with a better game plan on defense, but Caleb Williams is just a really good quarterback, and he got the best of us. It sucks, but, it is what it is. Next year, hopefully we'll be better and get our revenge.
And it's not like Drew Pine sucked either. He actually had some really good throws in that game. I was surprised. I was like, wait, everybody says how bad Drew Pine is, but he just made this throw that looked like an NFL throw. I was like, what has been like? I'll give him some credit for keeping it at least not a complete shellacking.
Yeah, I'm happy for Drew. I mean, I know he's not happy we lost, but I'm happy for him that the fans can get off his back, and hopefully he can do well with the bowl game. He might share reps with Tyler Buckner. I heard Tyler might be coming back for the bowl game, so we'll see what happens.
So Will's not going to say what his favorite upset game was, but I'll tell you what his favorite upset game was, and that was Texas A&M beating LSU. His favorite coach. Am I right, Will?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't
Silver lining
off the loss like it did when we lost to Ohio State and they beat Florida State, but it still made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. So John Walpole HGP, thanks for our super chat. He says, I want to thank Wisconsin poaching Fickle. It looks like Pitt will now have 2 easy non-conference wins next year. So who's your other easy one? If you're going to say West Virginia, you're going to get your butt kicked next year, so it doesn't matter. So Tony, USC, we knew they were going on to the Pac-12 championship anyway, but now they're going on with a win over their rival.
And a
it looks like
shillelagh.
you're going to face Utah. And it looks like you're going to face Utah.
A rematch against Utah.
Did you see Oregon? Did you see Oregon losing last night? Did you see that coming?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that game was flip a coin. I thought Bo Nix would pull off the win, but also we knew it would be flip a coin with the Beavers. I didn't think the Beavers could do it without a quarterback, and they did. Fourth quarter, whatever.
Is that me or him?
It's him. It's him.
One or two passes.
It's him. Tony, your internet's breaking up real bad, Tony.
Did I freeze? Okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Am I back? Okay, sorry.
You're back.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with the internet here. We didn't know if Oregon State would be able to do it, and they did it, which is really exciting for Oregon State, really exciting for Jonathan Smith. It's devastating for Oregon, who just lost their offensive coordinator last night to Arizona State. He's the new head coach, Kenny Dillingham. But it was really exciting for USC. I'll tell you, I think there's two big things that, and I'm going to steal this from John Wilner, so kudos to Wilner. Two big things that happen with USC being able to play Utah. The first one is if we win, it sort of cleans the schedule of the loss. The loss to Utah was 1 point on the road in a crazy emotional game where they honored their two deceased players with hand-painted helmets with their faces on them. I mean, it was all this stuff, big moment. Our last ever trip to Utah, and we lost by 1 point in a very, very controversial game. If we can beat them, I would say it like cleanses that a lot. You know, it's the revenge game. It says, okay, we beat everyone on our schedule, and that's enormous. The other thing, and the Oregon people get really mad when I talk about this. Oregon people are really triggered about when you talk about what happened with their Georgia game. They got humiliated by Georgia. And the thing is if we don't have to play them, we don't have to touch their blood stain of Georgia. And I honestly, from a committee standpoint, from an image standpoint, I think it's much better. We clean off our own blood stain, or at least stitch up the wound, and we don't have to touch that body of that mess from Georgia. So I actually think it's the best matchup we could ask for. Sorry, Oregon fans.
So Jay,
Tony, I wanted you to play
now.
Washington.
I know your favorite.
Oh, that would have been a great game.
I know
also, Washington would have accomplished the same thing. Sorry, Joey.
Oh, that's okay. Jay, I know that one of your favorite upsets yesterday was probably a game that didn't matter, and that was West Virginia upsetting Oklahoma State. That was a great win for West Virginia. Now, how about you though with other games? What was your favorite upset of the day? Was it Michigan beating Ohio State?
I'll put it this way: when it comes to the Michigan-Ohio State game, and I tweeted this out afterward, it was, and this is nothing personal to you in any way, shape, or form, but it was an annoying fan base beating a ridiculously, arrogantly annoying fan base, which we will take the lesser of two evils by far when it comes to
appreciate that.
Yeah,
by far. So that's a number one for me. Yes, absolutely. Seeing West Virginia win yesterday was outstanding. Unfortunately, I was not as dialed into the games yesterday as much as I wanted to be. I was on news duty for KYW News Radio, but in a backhanded way, I guess you would say, Minnesota's upset win over Wisconsin may have been the best thing for the program for Wisconsin, because there's the question. If Wisconsin wins that game, and if they blow Minnesota out, does Wisconsin have to keep Jim Leonhard? Now, I would guess they probably would have still hired Luke Fickell no matter what the result of the game was. But there would have probably been a big call among the fan base to say, hey, this guy can coach. If we beat Minnesota by like 20, 30 points, we know we've got something here. And they might have had to have kept Jim Leonhard, at least in some circles. Now, they made the right call no matter what with Luke Fickell. But I think that may have played a part in it. Who knows? I'm not in Chris McIntosh's mind. He's the athletic director. at Wisconsin, and he's made two brave calls, firing Paul Chryst, and less than 24 hours after their last game of the regular season, hiring Luke Fickell. But would he have made that step had Wisconsin won that game?
Now, Mr. Sorgi, do you think it was an upset? Because, I mean, Sky Umah, PJ Fleck, I mean, their record was pretty similar to Wisconsin's. Do you think it was a significant upset?
Not a significant one. I mean, Wisconsin was favored by 3. So I'm only going by the pure definition of the game. They were pretty even teams. But I'm just going by that specific, saying Wisconsin was a slight favorite in the game. And it's Jay, by the way. Mr. Sorgi is my grandfather.
And the kid calls Jay, I know that you told me. I know time can get away from you when you're in a live stream, and I know you said that you could stay for about 30 minutes. Are you okay to stay on, or you need to go?
I can stay for a little bit more.
Okay. Well, let's move on to some conference championships because some things got decided yesterday. So the Big 12's decided. I'll speak on that. So we got Kansas State and TCU going to be playing for the Big 12 championship next week. TCU, we all knew was the team that was going to be the team to beat this year in the Big 12. Kansas State's come on really strong. I mean, they're playing some solid football right now. And so there could be a different result next week than there was in the previous TCU-Kansas State game. Kansas State could actually upset TCU in the Big 12 championship. I don't foresee it, and I'm not calling for it, but it's a definite possibility. But yeah, I mean, so talk about the SEC championship too, because that got some that didn't get no shakeup really, but now LSU's coming in with 3 losses, right? Am I right, that guy?
Yeah, they've lost to Texas A&M, they lost to Tennessee, and they lost to Florida State.
Yeah, so they're out of the playoff question, but now they can still win the SEC. So we'll talk about that mix up or that.
Does that stop the SEC from pretending they're not out?
Yeah.
I hope LSU does beat Georgia. I really do. I think it would be hilarious. Because as most of the people on here know, I'm an Alabama fan, but I'm not an SEC homer. I hate everyone in the SEC. I'll cheer for Vandy once in a while because they're not good, but you know, I never use the phrase SEC. Nah, that's just wrong.
And John, now Michigan is going to take on who out?
Who in the world? Purdue Spoiler Makers.
Purdue, yeah.
And we are scared shitless. All you will hear from me until the game is how great Purdue's offense is, how great their quarterback is. You're not going to hear a single word from me other than that Purdue's a challenge. They're definitely more of a challenge than Iowa because they actually have an offense with a pulse. So I think it's going to be like last year we saved some things for the championship game because that was one of the big goals that we had last year. Then all out of nowhere you saw Donovan Edwards throw a pass. So I think you'll see something that a little bit of a wrinkle that they're saving, but I think that they unleashed their pass game yesterday, and there's no putting the toothpaste back in that tube. Like it's there, and they could go to that if they needed to.
Now, John, I was disappointed. I wanted Iowa to have a rematch with Michigan and beat you guys like 14-13 with a pick six, a field goal, and 2 safeties.
Hey, we wouldn't be in Kinnick. That's the thing. We wouldn't be in Kinnick that night.
True. So you'd be safe.
Yeah.
You'd been safe from Iowa.
Will, I'm talking to you about the ACC for a second because the ACC took a bad loss yesterday. Clemson losing, to South Carolina. That hurts the ACC tremendously.
Yeah,
So,
and I watched
what happened there now?
I was mostly watching the game, but I was looking at the highlights and condensed game of Clemson, South Carolina. It looked like us losing to Stanford and Marshall. It looked very similar to those. I mean, I'm not trying to put down South Carolina at that level, but it did look similar to that game. Like Clemson just made some baffling coaching decisions, terrible quarterback play from DJ. I love DJ, like as a person, but as a quarterback, he's not the same guy that he was in the COVID year. People found him out. They didn't run the ball enough. Like Will Shipley had like 15 rushes for 130 yards, but they didn't keep rushing it. They tried to pass it, and their receivers stink. Their quarterbacks stink. It was a complete disaster for Clemson. Their special teams stunk. Their defense wasn't bad, but they gave up a few plays. It was just a crazy game. Like, it looked like us losing to Stanford and Marshall. Like, it was carbon copy of that game. And it gave me flashbacks and made me sad.
Tony, now we know what's going to happen in the Pac-12. So do you want me to put this up on the screen, what you put down at the
just
bottom?
one last thought on the ACC, just in case folks are confused.
Good.
Just how to make it easier for everybody to understand.
Let me bring it up.
Bring it up. Just in case anyone's wondering how the ACC works. That's the ACC Championship Trophy along with the shillelagh. I just thought it would just make it easier for everyone to, have some perspective.
Oh, man, I tell you what. He's not going to let y'all live that down now. You got a whole off season to go with that. You know that, right?
Well, we actually originally made it for Stanford, but then we just replaced Stanford with USC now that it was safe.
So tell us how the Pac-12 is shaping up and what we're looking at in the Pac-12 now, Tony.
What a year for the Pac-12. Half of the conference is ranked in the top 20. So this is the conference that, had really couple down years. And George Kliavkoff, as he came in, had very serious, and some of the schools had already realized this, which is why Larry Scott got canned. But then George Kliavkoff came in and had come to Jesus meetings with every Pac-12 president about, you have to buy in and commit to football success. So with David Shaw's departure today, aside from Whittington at Utah, just think about this. Aside from Whittington at Utah, Chip Kelly is the longest tenured Pac-12 coach. Think about that. Chip Kelly is now the number 2. He's now the number 2 oldest coach or longest term coach in the Pac-12. It might be tied with Jonathan Smith. Jonathan Smith, who rebuilt Oregon State. Oregon State was already bought into that. So Stanford is now sort of checking into that. And the result of that is that 6 of the 12 teams, 6 of them are now ranked in the top 20 with their new coaches and their new rebuilding, which is just exciting and awesome. It's getting the conference back where it was. I have a giant Sports Illustrated blow up at home in New York. And it's a picture of USC running the ball, and it says something like SEC versus Pac-12, which is better, from like when we were normal again. And then they had sort of a decade of down. And so it's great to see them come out of it. Washington looking great. Washington's top 10. Utah's having a real good year. Oregon's had some up and down. Bo Nix's injured leg certainly played a role in that. But Oregon State, I mean, they've got the Platypus Trophy. They won the Civil War. So it's exciting for the conference to have that. I did a little thing. There are 7 rivalry trophies in the Pac-12. All 7 of them were just crazy epic games. All 7 of them. So like that, I mean, it's been a long time since we had that happen. Arizona, I mean, Jed Fish, that program had won one game in 3 years or something. I forget the exact. It was just ridiculous. And they got 5 wins, and they've got the Territorial Cup back in Tucson. And if you guys think there's we all know ugly rivalries, but like those 2 schools hate each other. Their trophy is older than the state. The reason it's called the Territorial Cup is because it's the cup for the championship of the territory of Arizona. And those 2 teams are both older than the state in their hating on each other. So it's a wild rivalry. I mean, I think they had a fight between the 2 teams with like 30 seconds to go. Like 5 players got ejected from the stadium.
The mascots went to war.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was wild. So it was just a crazy, crazy fun year for the conference, and exciting to have the conference back mattering again. And USC is happy to play the villain. We always have. It's good to be Darth Vader. As far as the rest of the conference is concerned, you see the articles are a riot. The folks, they're like, somebody said, I saw a thing from Utah. Somebody said today, I'm so excited. We'll have everyone in the country cheering for us except Los Angeles and Provo. And I laughed because I was like, actually, BYU, they're not cheering for USC anyway.
But Tony, one thing the Pac-12 needs to do, if you want to catch up with the SEC, you need to start storming the field. I mean, the SEC's done it 5 times this year, and we put money into the coffin. You know, when you guys win, storm the field. Put money into the Pac-12.
No, they do that. They just don't fine you $100,000 for it. They let you do it.
The problem with that is
they've done it in Oregon State, I think, twice this year, and Utah, and Arizona yesterday.
The Pac-12 has been in there before, and the SEC hasn't, so they're just excited. You know, that's what it is. The Pac-12 has been in there before.
And if you're USC, and you're storing the field at the Coliseum, do you really want to deal with the LAPD?
Yeah, right. Well, so USC, when we've had, so they didn't last night, because the thing about USC, now I remember when Pete Carroll came in, there were a couple of field stormings because we've been bad for so long. But USC has a bit of a snotty mentality, which is probably very Alabama-like, that like we've been here before. And so like you don't want to storm the field because you beat like the number 15 team when you were the number 5 team. So like they try not to do that. But yeah, it is pretty funny because the Pac doesn't really mind, as long they also, by the way, because I used to be on the game management committee at school, and they plan for it. So like the security, for example, they secure the visiting team. The visiting team's bench is on the opposite side of the students, is secured by security. It's right next to the tunnel. There's none of the like security issues that you have at a lot of SEC stadiums when they do that. They surround the goalposts, which are all, I think, the lowerable ones. You know, it's just you don't have any of those issues like you have in the SEC.
Yeah, I see a tradition coming on at Tennessee for the fans in the student section to come down and just take the goalposts and throw them in the river. I can see a tradition happening there. They better start lowering them goalposts there.
Well, Joey, the good news is they only beat Bama every 15 years, so they're not going to lose that many goalposts.
Yeah, can you imagine the goalposts on the Santa Monica freeway headed to the pier? The goalposts are moving faster than the cars. Cars are sitting in traffic being like, damn, I wish I had some goalposts.
They'll be passing the goalposts down the 405.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Faster than the cars. That would actually be awesome.
Now, Tony, you wasn't on yesterday when I was talking. I was really happy in the Michigan game yesterday. Did you notice it got a little chippy and the Michigan player kind of threw a punch? And I said, wow, they can actually fight outside the tunnel.
Yeah. True. I grew up in Michigan, and I mean, Coach Carr is a good friend of our family. I grew up going to games, being on the sidelines in Ann Arbor. And so, like, to me, that was exciting and awesome. My best friend from high school called me, and we were doing it's great to be a Michigan Wolverine. It's great. So, like, I was excited for Michigan yesterday. That was great. I think JJ McCarthy's awesome. I think he's a really cool guy too. And watching him be able to have that, Harbaugh be able to have that day, just so exciting for the whole state of Michigan. The governor had declared it like Beat the Buckeyes Day.
Yep, Beat the Buckeyes Day.
And isn't she a Spartan too?
Yep.
Yeah, so the Spartan governor declared it Beat the Buckeyes Day. I mean, it was just what a cool thing for Michigan. My late grandpa is somewhere with Woody Hayes right now, scheming revenge, surely, from above. But it was that was a great, and I think that all of these games. The USC Notre Dame game was wild and fun. These are games that are good for the game. I think that we're getting these teams, a lot of these teams that have been down, have had struggles. Michigan, I mean, Harbaugh took a half pay cut to bet on himself. So getting these teams that have been down back, Notre Dame, USC mattered last night. I haven't seen the TV numbers on it, but like everybody's doing, right there. Sergeant Pickles, dogs to the Rose Bowl. The dogs belong in the Rose Bowl. Like Washington used to just own the whole Pacific Northwest. I mean, and Washington is an amazing institution, and so it's great to have all those teams back. West Virginia, I think, is next. Like we've got to get West Virginia back as a dominant for like we shouldn't hear about like Texas Tech when West Virginia's around. Sorry, guys.
No, well, and think about that, Tony. I've been saying all year that we need the Blue Bloods back. Michigan back-to-back year, they're a blue blood. They're back. Ohio State's been there. Bama's been there. USC, you're now going to get the chance to make it to the playoffs. You guys are back. Notre Dame, looks a lot better now than they did to start the year. If Notre Dame turns it around.
Texas getting better.
Looking good. Now Oklahoma's down. So Oklahoma's going to take some rebuilding, but I think Venables can do it.
Yeah.
I think so too.
And I don't think Oklahoma's down like bad. They're just they had their adjustment year. And I don't think I don't think they're gonna be in that 3-8 world. But what's killing them, and I was actually thinking about this today, like for poor Oklahoma, for that, not the douchebags on Twitter because I revel in their misery, but the awesome fans from Oklahoma, and I have a lot of great friends from Oklahoma, are literally watching their plan play out in LA. That kind of sucks.
David actually, no, he didn't. David in the chat says that he forgot to mention Marshall beating Notre Dame. No, Tony actually talked about that a little bit.
And you know what? The Marshall Notre Dame game is going to be like the Michigan App State game. It's going to be a victory that sorry, Will, because I know this sucks for you guys, but like it's one of those games that like people talk about forever, and it inspires the G5 and inspires that idea of hope for teams. It sucks. I can tell you this as a USC fan. It sucks when you're the one. Like I still see the guy be like there's an amazing radio announcer from Oregon State. Jay, you probably know who he is. I forget his name, but the year when we were undefeated and all of the newspapers said like it's USC and the Nine Dwarves. Like, why does USC even play a conference schedule in the Pac-10 and all this? And he went up to Corvallis and got beat. And the guy's like, no one thought the USC Trojans would have any trouble with the conference, but they got a lesson tonight in Corvallis, Oregon. I mean, it's just one of those epic radio moments.
Mike Parker?
Yeah, Mike Parker. Yes, it's Mike Parker. Oh, it's Mike Parker at his finest. And it's like, you hate that you're the victim of that, but you're also like, yeah, that was a great moment in the history of the game. Mike Parker's call will live on forever.
So we're talking about Marshall and Notre Dame being the game this year, and everybody's going to talk about it. There's been bigger upsets than that. I look at Appalachian State beating Texas A&M.
Liberty beating Arkansas. That was my first one. I was going to go.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you didn't realize App State was coming to town and was going to be a challenge for you, then that's your own fault, Jimbo.
Yeah, exactly. Jay, I'm going to move on to another subject here real quick, if you've got time to stay with us about another 10 minutes. Okay, so let's move on to there's all these upsets yesterday, big wins, bad losses, whatever. Now we're going to have shake up in the college football playoff rankings. So I want everybody to give me their top 6 where you see everybody falling in right now. And we'll start with Ty Guy there. Ty, do you have a top 6 right now?
I actually would put Michigan number 1 with the win yesterday. And the way Georgia has been playing as of late. And I really think you're kind of splitting hairs there. I mean, 1 or 2, it is not that big of a deal. But I would have Michigan 1. I would put Georgia 2. I would put TCU 3. I would put USC 4. Now, everybody's going to say I'm a homer, but I would put Alabama 5 and Ohio State 6. And the reason I would do that is we lost 2 games, and that's true, by 4 points on the last play in each game. Ohio on the road in hostile environments. And Ohio State laid an egg at home against a team who was wounded, didn't have their best player, and got whooped. Okay, so, I mean, that's why I would have Alabama over Ohio State. Now, if Ohio State's above us, I understand they're going to say a 1-loss team's better than a 2-loss team. But that's the reason why I would put Alabama ahead, just because our losses were on the road last second, and we didn't get shellacked like Ohio State did.
And you found a way to win some really close, tough games too.
Right. And if you look at how we're playing right now, I mean, we are playing a lot better than we were early on.
Okay. Don, how about your top 6?
So this one's tough because I know everybody expects me to put Michigan first, But I actually, given what I've seen Georgia do this year and some of the absolute curb stomps that they've dealt teams that were considered good teams. You could say Oregon was at the beginning of the season, but I mean that was a big win for Georgia, right? It's tough. I'm going to put Georgia first for now, and we'll see what happens SEC championship and Big Ten championship. Michigan clearly number 2, TCU 3, USC 4, and then on the outs I would put Ohio State 5, Bama 6.
Now, can I ask you a question, John?
Will,
yeah.
How about you?
Wouldn't you be better off being number 2 right now instead of number 1? Because think about this. Wouldn't you rather play TCU than you would play USC right now? I mean, because USC is hot right now. So actually being number 1 right now might be a disadvantage.
Yeah, part of me is thinking let USC and Georgia battle it out, and then we could, if we beat TCU, which I think we could,
right.
Then we take on whoever survives that battle.
The fun thing is those are both good
that
games.
Would be the easy game.
Those are both good games. Like I think those are definitely the 4 best teams. Like I know TCU plays bad teams close, but like they looked really good this week against Iowa State. So
yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would go 6. I would go 6 Ohio State, 5 Bama, 4 USC, 3 TCU, 2 Michigan, and 1 Georgia. So it's kind of like everyone else's.
Not about the same. Tony, how about you? You got any changes there, or you?
I have some changes. Number 1, hail to the victors, valiant hail. After their game, they're undefeated. Georgia's looked weak. I'm giving it to Big Blue. I mean, also like all 4 are going in, so like the order doesn't matter as much. But I don't necessarily believe that Georgia is ordained by God as the number 1 team, and I think Michigan has looked good. If you want to be like, oh, all right, you know what? We saw what happened with Mizzou. We saw what happened with Kent State. Michigan had 1 tough game with Illinois, but yeah, Georgia's had a lot of tough games. So I give number 2 to Georgia. TCU, I've told you guys the Cinderella story. Cinderella was at the ball. It was 11:45. She was going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight. She went in the bathroom. There was a sketchy dude there. She bought a little baggie of pixie dust, and she sprinkled it on herself or sniffed it or whatever she had to do, and she's still dancing at the after party at 6:30 in the morning. So TCU is Cinderella, and I think they deserve the playoff spot, but I give them number 4 because after that game last night, putting SC at 3. I give Alabama 5. Ohio State, great team. I think they belong at 6. And number 7, Sergeant Pickles, arf, 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 bow down to Washington. So that's my top 7.
And Jay's with us today from Sorgi Stories. Jay, tell me your top 6.
I think 1 and 2, my 1 and 2 will probably flip after the college football playoff because of who each team is playing. But but right now, I would put Michigan number 1. When you spank your arch rival in a battle of 2 versus 3 on the road the way that they did, you cannot not put them number 1. But that's at the moment by a smidge over Georgia. And I think the fact that Michigan is playing Purdue and Georgia is going to be playing LSU for the SEC championship, that may make a flip when you get to how the committee is going to decide 1 and 2 after next weekend's games. But that's what I would do for now. TCU, you talk about the pixie dust. I've seen TCU have that pixie dust shine. I was blessed to cover the Rose Bowl in 2011 when the Badgers went up against TCU, and TCU put its grandest performance on in beating Wisconsin and solidifying themselves as a high program, as a Power 5 program. I could see that being the same way they're going to be approaching this upcoming series of games. But we're going to get to what could happen if TCU loses to Kansas State with my 5 and 6. Number 4, absolutely. USC. And again, only by a smidge. USC has a great argument for being number 3. But here's where 5 and 6 can get very controversial. Tony, your argument is fantastic about Alabama being over Ohio State based upon what they did with their strength of schedule and the strength of their losses compared to getting spanked by Michigan this past week at home. But I got to tell you, if Kansas State upsets TCU, the committee is going to have a ridiculous decision to make. Do they bring in Alabama, this team that has been part of the playoff for so long and has won so many championships, or do they bring in Ohio State and a possibility of the greatest rivalry in college football, arguably, being a national semifinal or a national championship game?
Crazy.
Michigan, Ohio State to decide everything in college football. You don't think the committee's not thinking about that?
Now, here's a question for you, though. You bring that up. Will the committee do to the Big Ten what they do to the SEC and not make them play in the first round? Because you know how they did with Alabama and Georgia. We're not going to do a rematch in Summit. We're going to make that the finals.
Yeah, the title game.
Would they give the same courtesy to Ohio State and Michigan, not to put them in the first, not make Michigan number 1 and Ohio State number 4 so they play the first round? Do you think the committee would do that?
Michigan would be 2.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what's going to happen anyway, regardless of what would happen with a possible TCU loss to Kansas State, because, again, strength of schedule with this final week, Georgia winning the SEC championship game against a ranked LSU team instead of Michigan going up against a Purdue team that they should win by 3 touchdowns. So I think you would probably see Georgia be ranked number 1 anyway for that reason. But I think there could be something in their minds as well saying, if that scenario happens, split them up and set up the ultimate championship game with the ultimate rivalry.
Yeah, I would say the one thing about that is, like, we don't control the big, like, it sucks for us because we don't control the fact that the Big Ten West is, as D4 Sports always says, the McDonald's Playhouse. So that part isn't really under our control. So it just, like, if that's the factor, that kind of sucks. Also, Purdue's a good offensive team. I actually believe that. So.
But think about this, John. Your commissioner had the chance before the season to say we're going to change, and I mean, the SEC's the same way. I mean, we're still divisions too, but that was one thing that you got to give the Pac-12 credit for. This year, they had the hindsight to say, hey, we're not doing divisions no more. We're going to go with 1 and 2. And think of what could happen, though. I mean, you could have had a rematch next week with Ohio State.
I know.
That's the hard thing, because the cool thing about the Pac-12 is it worked out so well. Like Jeff said, it worked out so well. Last night at freaking 2:00 in the morning, like, there were like 4 West Coast teams, 5 West Coast teams riveted watching the Apple Cup between Washington and Washington State from Wazoo. Literally at 2:00 in the morning Eastern, you had everyone from USC, Washington State, Oregon, and Utah all watching this game, riveted to see who was going to end up in the Pac-12 championship. On the last game in the last night of the season at 2:00 in the morning was everything you could have hoped for. But the downside of that is that you could have just, if you do get something, like, for example, if UCLA had not blown their game against Oregon, you could have just immediately had a rematch of USC and UCLA in Vegas.
Tony, do me a favor and bring that graphic back up you made a while ago. You had up a while ago. Bring that graphic.
The same one?
Back up here for me. The same one. Because I want to talk about something, and we're going to have to change that graphic here before long, I'm afraid. So here's this graphic that Tony made. All right. So he has, let me take this off the screen. He has SC's greater than Notre Dame. Notre Dame's greater than the entire ACC, pretty much. I'm hoping that in the playoffs, that right before that USC, you have to put a Horned Frog. I'm hoping that the Big 12 can represent and beat USC, and then the Big 12 will be greater than the Pac-12, greater than Notre Dame, and greater than the ACC. And that's what I'm hoping for. So get your graphic ready for the Horned Frogs, because I have a feeling that Kansas State's not going to upset TCU. TCU is going to make playoffs, and I don't see Utah beating USC. How will they put them in the rankings to be able to play each other? I don't know. I'd like to see that game, though. I would like to see TCU and USC.
Tony, imagine MH Ver.
Yeah.
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 Now,
Those folks.
how cool, Tony? How cool would it have been if this year's playoffs, the first round could have been in the Rose Bowl, and USC could have played Michigan in the Rose Bowl in the play? You know,
it would have been awesome. Like, I mean, it would have just been amazing, and we still may get it. I mean, I honestly think we may see USC Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl instead of the Rose Bowl, and I'm here for that.
Yeah,
like that would just
one
be
more question
amazing.
has been asked of me, and so we have a lot of Mountaineer fans in here, and a lot of people are wondering, can West Virginia make a bowl game? And so here's how that works: how they choose a 5 and 7 team. It goes by APR rankings. So whereas West Virginia in APR rankings, they're actually not too bad. They're like fourth in the Big 12. The three ahead of them, one of them's Iowa State. Iowa State's not going to a bowl. They're done. So you would have the other two, though. They're already in a bowl. They're fine. Especially if it would be the first out of the Big 12. That's how that would work. There are also, they're like 50. They're tied for 50th or something in the country. Most of the teams ahead of them are going bowls. So a 5 and 7 West Virginia team going to a bowl has a really good chance, even with academics, because the APR is the athletic rankings as far as their academics. So
now I just read an article though, Joey. Joey, there's 2 places left, and one depends on the game coming up Friday. But the first team with 5 and 7 they say is going to get a bowl is actually Auburn. Now, I hope that's not true. I want Auburn sitting home. I don't want them in a bowl. I don't want them to get 15 extra practices. But unfortunately, from what I read, that Auburn would get one of the 2 if they open up.
I'm surprised that's over Vandy.
I am too. I would give it to Vandy. I mean, Vandy deserves it. I mean, come on.
Auburn's 27th in the nation in APR, and Vandy is got to be higher than that, I would think. But it doesn't look like they are. No, Vanderbilt is not. Vanderbilt's going to be lower than them, so that would be right.
Yeah.
And I don't know where Vanderbilt is. Let me see if I can find Vanderbilt here. So Auburn's tied for 27th. Vanderbilt, where is Vanderbilt at?
Well, see, what helps Auburn is, they got beat bad at home, but it was to Penn State. And Penn State actually had a decent year, so that loss don't look as bad as, what Vandy had.
Vanderbilt's actually 57th. Vanderbilt's actually 57th, so West Virginia's even ahead of Vanderbilt. So,
yeah. All right, guys, I gotta go, but thanks for having me on.
That's hard to believe.
Great meeting
Thanks,
you.
Will. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Will.
Sorgi, are you gonna be back for the After Dark show, Jay?
I should be there post Packers Eagles, which our son Anthony are going to be doing tonight.
All right, well, have fun doing that together with Anthony.
Awesome, love to see you there.
All right, see you guys.
We'll see you after.
Bye, Will.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and wrap the show up for today. It's been I enjoyed this show. This is a great show, and that hour and 5 minutes just kind of flew by. But anyway, I'm gonna give everybody their final thoughts, final words. Jay, tell everybody where to find you at, and everything you got going on, your radio station you're at now, and everything.
I'm now at KYW News Radio here in Philadelphia. I'm doing digital news there, but also, as you see on the description, Sorgi Stories. It's the channel that the kid Anthony, whom all of you see so often on your college football chats. He and I do right now. We're doing live streams, usually once a week of a game that we're watching. Typically, right now, it's going to be the Green Bay Packers in the National Football League, but sometimes we branch out into a college football game. But also, we've done a lot of vlogs, game watching experiences at stadiums, along with just our life adventures. And hopefully, we're going to be getting back to that pretty soon as well. Some of our life experiences, the games that we're going to be going to. We love baseball. We do a lot of baseball travel, that type of stuff. So that's what you're going to see as well. And one very quick West Virginia thought for you. we've talked, Joey, about how the hiring situation for West Virginia is going to be based on what the athletic director is doing. They're waiting to hire an athletic director. Do not be shocked if you see West Virginia possibly, after hiring that AD, going after coaching possibilities with those that could be NFL coordinators and going after NFL coordinators' jobs, which means Jim Leonard may be in play at WVU because his hiring window may be West Virginia's hiring window. And I want to throw one more name at you when it comes to West Virginia and who I think they should at least kick the tires on. And I don't know if he would even think about going after a college football head coaching job, but with his history in the state, it could be attractive, and I think West Virginia would put up big money for him. Byron Leftwich. Imagine him at WVU.
Dang.
And I know they would be willing to put up big money to get a guy like him. He could go into any college, high school quarterback's home, any five-star recruit's home, show off his Super Bowl ring that he won with Tom Brady and say, hey, you know something? I won this with the GOAT. I can teach you what he knows.
Be one hell of a recruiting pitch.
Exactly. I don't know if Leftwich would even think about doing it. But if I'm WVU, I'm at least making that phone call down to Tampa Bay and just checking. I have no clue if he would actually even consider it. But they've got to at least try.
Yeah. They need to think outside the box. That's for sure. I agree. They do need to think outside the box. We hear all these names. Hugh Freeze, we hear Tom Herman. We hear all that.
Tom Herman a lot.
Outside the box, there's a lot of great coaches out there that could really turn the program around, and that's one of them. That's for sure. Jay, I appreciate you coming in with us and stuff today and telling us about the Wisconsin hire Luke Fickell. If you guys missed it at the top of the show, first thing we touched on was Wisconsin hiring Luke Fickell, and this guy has a great thing about to say about that. So be sure and tune into the first part of the show. John Walpole, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. He said Pitt versus Wisconsin Pinstripe Bowl, predicting it. What do you think, Jay?
Nice. We'll take it. We'll
nice
take
stadium.
a bowl game. Yeah.
Easy win for Wisconsin.
Although
Wisconsin.
In all the years I lived in the city, I never went to a Pinstripe Bowl, never knew when it was, or never met anyone who did go. So, but it is a cool stadium.
Exactly. And we live 2 hours away. We might just take that trip. Who knows?
Do it. Oh, yeah. It's a great ballpark.
Yep.
Good deal. Thanks for coming in, Jay. Tony, you want to give us your final thoughts?
Fight on Penn, Jay.
Everybody where to find you.
Fight on Quakers.
Awesome.
Hey, what a season. What just an epic season of the game for everybody. Congratulations to everybody's teams who won big yesterday. And time to start rebuilding and scheming to everybody whose teams didn't. And if you're feeling down, I'll tell you guys just a quick story. My dad's a football coach, and what happens after the last game of the season, which is the big city championship rivalry game, is that they do the videotape the next morning, and the seniors don't come, but the sophomores from the JV do, because that's the day you start the next game. And my sophomore year, we lost in a really ugly game, 28-0. And the next morning, we got back, and we all got to the school. We watched the game. And it was an absolute silence. I mean, silence that you could cut with a knife as we watched the game film. And my dad, he just said nothing. Said nothing. And he gets up, and the VHS tapes at the time, and he hits the little eject button. And then he just screams, "We will never lose to them again," and takes the tape and flings it like a frisbee as it goes spinning and shatters against the brick wall of the school. And he says, "Starts now." So to everybody, and we didn't for the next 4 years in a row. It was actually kind of awesome. So to anybody whose team didn't have a great win, it starts now, and cheer for them, support them, and don't rip on them. Support them and help them do what they need to get success, and you'll have it next year. So everybody fight on. We'll see you in Vegas.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Hopefully see you
John.
in Glendale.
Yeah. And John,
Absolutely.
You're planning your trip to Glendale, aren't you?
Well, we'll see how this goes the next couple weeks, but I will say this. I mean, Tony is definitely right. You know, we've been through hell and back with Brady Hoke and the dark days, so we've been there. Obviously, this was a great win for us, and it made going to the big house about a week and change ago and the 10-degree wind chill, it made it all worth it because I got to see the team and see what, like, the seeds of what was going to happen. So, Jay, I guess we'll see you on later tonight. You can find me on Voice of College Football, where I do the Sunday night after dark show, 10:45 p.m. Eastern, 9:45 Central. I also do videos with D4 Sports every week we call it the Michigan Review Preview. Talk about what just happened, break down some film, and then talk about what's happening the next week. So catch me at those places. And thanks for having me on, Joey, and go Blue.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for coming on. So I'm gonna wrap this up. And listen, everybody in the chat, I appreciate you coming in. All the super chats, we really appreciate you. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to all of our guests, especially to Jay for coming in. Be sure and tune in to that College Football After Dark show on Mark Rogers at 10:45 tonight, because Jay will be on there too. And probably by that time, I would think we would have an official announcement that Luke Fickell is going to be the coach at Wisconsin, I would think. So be sure and tune in because Jay's going to be there talking to him about it. Everyone have a great day. We appreciate you, love you, and thank you for being here.